Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something truly unpleasant. Imagine the grandeur of ancient Rome, the colossal Colosseum, the majestic aqueducts, the bustling forums. You picture marble statues gleaming under the Mediterranean sun, senators in pristine togas debating philosophy, and the air filled with the scent of spices and olive oil. It's a picture of civilization at its peak, isn't it? But what if I told you that beneath those magnificent streets, a hidden world festered, a realm of unimaginable filth, stench, and brutal labor? Tonight, you're going to walk through the Roman sewer system, not as a tourist, but as one of the unfortunate souls who kept its putrid heart beating. And trust me, you probably wouldn't have survived a week down there. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, tell me, where in the world are you tuning in from? And what time is it for you right now? Let me know in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing on a dusty Roman street, the sun beating down, a cacophony of vendors hawking their wares, and the distant murmur of the crowd. But your gaze is drawn not to the vibrant market stalls, but to a dark, gaping hole in the cobblestones, barely acknowledged by the bustling citizens. This isn't just a drain, it's an entrance, a literal gateway to a subterranean nightmare. You breathe in, and the air is thick with a smell you can't quite place. A heavy, cloying odor that somehow manages to combine the earthy dampness of a cave with something profoundly unclean. It's the scent of human waste, decay, and the metallic tang of stagnant water, all mixed into an unholy perfume that clings to your clothes and permeates your very being. This is your new office, your daily grind. Forget your air-conditioned cubicle or your comfortable workshop. You are a cloacarius, a Roman sewer worker, and your job is to descend into the very bowels of the city. As you prepare to enter, you can already feel the chill radiating from the depths, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat above ground. The darkness below promises to be absolute, broken only by the flickering, greasy light of a single oil lamp you carry, casting long, dancing shadows that seem to writhe on the damp walls. You pull your rough tunic tighter, a futile attempt to ward off the chill and the pervasive sense of dread that settles in your gut. The Romans, for all their architectural marvels and legalistic genius, lived in a world where modern concepts of hygiene were utterly alien. They had public baths, yes, grand and impressive, where citizens would gather, socialize, and cleanse themselves. But what happened to all that bath water? What about the waste from the public latrines, where Romans would sit side by side, chatting as they relieved themselves? It all flowed somewhere, and that somewhere was often directly into the Tiber River, or more advanced for its time, into the intricate network of sewers that snaked beneath the city. The Cloaca Maxima, the greatest sewer, is the star of this show, a monument to Roman engineering prowess, built centuries before your time. You know its history, or at least the legends of its construction. It began not as a grand, unified system, but as an open channel designed to drain marshy lowlands, transforming swampland into usable ground for the growing city. Over time, as Rome expanded and its population swelled, this open channel was progressively covered, bricked over, and expanded, transforming it into a vast underground network. It was an ambitious project, initiated during the reign of the early kings, long before the republic or empire you now live under. The initial purpose was simply land reclamation, allowing for the construction of the Roman Forum and other essential civic spaces. But as the city grew, so did its waste problem, and the Cloaca Maxima found a new, even more critical role, serving as the primary artery for Rome's effluent. You step onto the first rung of a rough wooden ladder, the wood slick with a slimy film. The air immediately becomes heavier, thicker, a palpable weight on your chest. The sound of the bustling city above fades, replaced by the ominous gurgle and splash of unseen currents. You begin your slow descent, each step taking you deeper into the earth, deeper into a world most Romans preferred to forget existed. The darkness is profound, the light from your lamp struggling to pierce the gloom. You can feel the cold, damp air on your skin, carrying with it a cocktail of pathogens that would send a modern doctor into a panic. This is not a place of grand architecture or philosophical discourse. This is a place of raw, unadulterated human waste. The sheer volume of waste generated by a city as populous as Rome was staggering. Estimates vary, but some historians believe Rome's population may have approached 1 million people at its peak. Imagine the waste from that many individuals, multiplied by the animals, the markets, the public baths, and the various industries. While a universal historical fact states that ancient cities often struggled with waste management, Rome was unique in its attempt to channel it systematically. Yet, even with the Cloaca Maxima, the system was far from perfect, and its maintenance was a never-ending, thankless task. You're part of that thankless task. The concept of flushing, as we know it, didn't exist in the same way. While water was directed into the sewers, it wasn't always a powerful cleansing flush. Much of the waste, especially solid matter, would settle, accumulate, and putrefy. And that's where you come in. Your job is to clear these blockages, to ensure the flow continues, to literally dig through layers of centuries-old filth. It's an arduous, disgusting, and incredibly dangerous undertaking. The Romans, for all their sophisticated engineering, hadn't quite mastered the mechanics of self-cleaning sewers. They still required human intervention, and that intervention was provided by you and your fellow, equally unfortunate, workers. The debate among scholars about the true effectiveness of the Roman sewer system still rages. Some historians argue that, while impressive for its time, it was often overwhelmed and contributed more to disease than it prevented. Others contend that it was a vital, if imperfect, system that allowed for the unprecedented growth of a major urban center. The truth, as you'll soon discover, likely lies somewhere in between, with the crucial caveat that its effectiveness came at a horrific human cost. The Roman elite might have enjoyed cleaner streets, but the price was paid by the laborers who ventured into the dark below. As you reach the bottom of the ladder, your feet sink slightly into a thick, viscous sludge. The lamp reveals a narrow, arched tunnel, its walls glistening with slime. The sound of running water is louder now, a constant, unsettling rush. You can see hints of other tunnels branching off, disappearing into the blackness like the veins of some subterranean monster. This is the heart of Rome's hidden world, a world of darkness, disease, and despair. And for you, it's just the beginning of another long, brutal day. The stench, you quickly learn, is a constant companion, an oppressive blanket that never lifts. It's not just the smell of human waste. It's a complex bouquet of rot, mold, and something vaguely metallic, hinting at the decay of countless organic materials. Your nostrils burn, and a persistent, acrid taste coats the back of your throat. This isn't a smell you can ever truly get used to, only tolerate, pushing it to the periphery of your awareness as you focus on the treacherous ground beneath your feet. You stumble occasionally, your lamp swinging wildly, threatening to plunge you into absolute darkness. The narrow, arched passage forces you to hunch over, your back aching within minutes of beginning your shift. You are deep within the belly of Rome now, far below the bustling streets and the grandeur of the Forum. Here, the only sounds are the insidious drip of water, the scuttling of unseen creatures, rats. You assume, and likely worse, and the ominous, echoing rush of the main current carrying the city's refuse. Your only companion is the flickering light of your oil lamp, which seems to gulp at the meager oxygen. its flame dancing nervously as if afraid of the darkness it barely holds at bay. The air is thick, humid, and heavy with the miasma of decay. Each breath feels like inhaling a mouthful of damp, fetid earth. Your immediate task, as you know from countless previous shifts, is to inspect a section of the main conduit for blockages. The Romans, with all their engineering brilliance, hadn't quite solved the problem of solid waste accumulating. Despite the constant flow of water, especially from the overflow of the public baths, heavier refuse would settle, gradually building up until it restricted the flow. These blockages were catastrophic. They could cause sewage to back up into the streets, into the lower levels of homes, and even into the sacred temples. And that, of course, was bad for everyone, especially the powerful who lived above. You pick up a heavy, short-handled shovel from the pile of tools left near the entrance. The metal is cold and slick, the work is brutal, back-breaking, and utterly dehumanizing. You wade into the sluggish current, the murky water rising above your ankles, sometimes higher, depending on the recent rainfall. You can feel unseen objects brushing against your legs, discarded refuse, organic matter, and the chilling possibility of something far more sinister. Your bare feet, or perhaps feet clad only in thin, sodden sandals, offer little protection against the jagged debris that litters the sewer bed. Cuts and scrapes are common, and in this environment, a small wound can quickly fester into a life-threatening infection. Imagine plunging your shovel into a putrid mixture of human excrement, food scraps, animal carcasses, and discarded household waste. The smell, somehow, intensifies as you disturb the settled layers. The material is dense, cloying, and surprisingly heavy. Each scoop is an effort, a grunt of exertion echoing in the confined space. You work slowly, methodically, heaving the excavated filth into a waiting wicker basket. These baskets, once filled, will be hauled up to the surface by another team, their contents dumped into carts and taken outside the city walls. Where exactly? You try not to think about it too much. This wasn't just brute force, it required a grim kind of expertise. You had to know where the common choke points were, where the gradients of the sewer lines flattened out, allowing solids to settle. You had to recognize the subtle changes in the flow of water that indicated a growing problem. Historians still debate whether Roman engineers truly understood fluid dynamics in a way that would have allowed for perfectly self-cleaning sewers, or if their system relied heavily on constant manual intervention like yours. What's undeniable, though, is that the system, whatever its theoretical elegance, depended entirely on the brutal labor of individuals like yourself. You occasionally come across peculiar items, a broken piece of pottery, a child's lost toy, perhaps even a discarded piece of jewelry, though you know better than to touch such things. Rumors persist of those who tried to salvage treasures from the muck, only to succumb to the diseases that lurked within. You've seen what happens when the fever takes hold, when the body wastes away, eyes sunken and skin jaundiced. It's a common end for many of your colleagues. Life expectancy for a cloacarius was notoriously short. The constant exposure to pathogens, the lack of proper ventilation, the physical strain, it all combined to create a truly deadly profession. The sewer system wasn't just for human waste. It was a catch-all for anything the Romans wanted to get rid of. From the public latrines where water continuously ran, carrying away the waste of hundreds of people each day, to the private homes of the wealthy, where slop buckets were emptied directly into street drains that fed into the main sewers. Everything eventually found its way down here. Even the bloody effluvia from butcher shops and the waste from tanneries, reeking of urine and animal hides, would eventually join the subterranean flow. It was a complex, interconnected system of disposal, reflecting the Roman desire for order and cleanliness on the surface, regardless of the chaos and filth it generated below. You remember that story from earlier about the strange crocodile dung sunscreen? Well, That probably ended up down here too, along with everything else. The sheer scale of the network is mind-boggling. The Cloaca Maxima alone stretched for miles, a massive artery with countless smaller capillaries branching off, collecting waste from every corner of the city. You might spend an entire shift crawling through a narrow tributary, clearing a blockage with nothing but your bare hands and a small pick, feeling the clammy walls close in around you. The fear of collapse is a constant, gnawing presence. Sections of the sewer were built with incredibly strong concrete and brick. But time and the corrosive nature of the sewage could weaken even the mightiest structures. A sudden collapse, a cave-in of earth and stone, would mean an instant, suffocating death, buried alive in a tomb of filth. And then there's the gas. Methane, hydrogen sulfide. The Romans didn't have names for these invisible killers, but they knew their effects. A sudden dizziness, a crushing headache, and then, if you weren't lucky enough to be pulled out in time, unconsciousness and death. Stories circulate among the workers of colleagues who simply dropped, never to rise again, their lamps sputtering out as they succumbed to the toxic fumes. It's a constant gamble, a roll of the dice every time you descend. You learn to recognize the subtle signs, a strange sweetness in the air, a metallic tang, or a sudden, overwhelming feeling of lassitude. These are your warnings, often too late. The work is solitary, punctuated only by the distant calls of other workers or the occasional clatter of tools. There's little companionship down here, just the grim, shared reality of your existence. You are part of the hidden machinery of Rome, ensuring that the city above can continue its grand, civilized life. Oblivious to the sacrifices made in the darkness below, you are the unseen, the unthanked, the easily forgotten. And as you scrape another shovelful of putrid muck into the basket, you can't help but wonder what fresh horrors the next section of the sewer will reveal. The air in the Roman sewers, as you've painfully discovered, isn't just thick with stench. It's a breeding ground for every malady imaginable. Every shallow cut, every barely noticed scrape from a jagged shard of pottery or a rough stone, becomes an open invitation for the unseen killers that thrive in this putrid environment. You've seen it happen countless times. A seemingly minor injury turns angry and red, then swells, the flesh around it growing hot to the touch. The fever follows, a burning inferno within the body, accompanied by chills that shake you to your very bones. Your limbs grow heavy, your muscles ache, and your head pounds with relentless intensity. This is the reality of disease in the Roman underworld. There are no physicians down here, no herbal remedies that truly work against the invisible armies attacking your very cells. You might hear whispers of a concoction from a wise woman on the surface, or a prayer offered to a forgotten god. But ultimately, you are on your own. You learn to recognize the signs in your colleagues, the jaundiced yellow of their eyes, the pallor of their skin, the labored, rattling breaths that signal the end is near. Dysentery, typhoid, cholera, names that wouldn't exist for centuries. But their brutal effects were all too real. The constant presence of human and animal waste, the stagnant water, the lack of ventilation, all combined to create a perfect storm for the rapid spread of pathogens. Imagine wading through ankle-deep sewage, your skin constantly exposed to the very things that cause these horrific illnesses. Every splash, every accidental gulp of the foul water introduces untold microscopic enemies into your system. You try to keep your hands away from your mouth, but fatigue, carelessness, and the sheer monotony of the work make it nearly impossible. The rats, too, are a constant menace, bold and numerous. You see their beady eyes glinting in the faint lamplight, their scuttling forms darting across the muck. They carry their own host of diseases, their bites a further risk in this deadly ecosystem. A seemingly innocuous rat bite could lead to a swift, agonizing death, far from the light of day. Beyond the immediate infections, There were the long-term ailments that slowly chipped away at a worker's health. The damp, cold environment led to constant aches in your joints, a persistent cough that never quite went away, and a general weariness that settled deep into your bones. The lack of proper nutrition, combined with the extreme physical exertion, left your body vulnerable, its defenses weakened. You probably ate meager rations, whatever cheap gruel or bread you could afford with your pitiful wages, providing little sustenance for the demanding work you performed. Your body, already a battleground, struggled to repair itself. The concept of germ theory was millennia away, a fact that profoundly shaped the daily lives of the Roman sewer workers. They had no understanding of how diseases spread, only that they did, seemingly by arbitrary cruel fate. They might attribute illness to angry gods, bad air miasma, or personal sin. This lack of knowledge made prevention impossible and treatment rudimentary at best. The very air you breathed, heavy with the stench of decay, was considered by many Romans to be the primary vector of disease. While they weren't entirely wrong about the air's role, their understanding of the cause was fundamentally flawed, making their efforts to mitigate risk utterly ineffective. You recall a story, passed down among the workers, of a section of the sewer that was so notoriously putrid, so filled with deadly gases, that no one would enter it. They say a whole crew was lost there one day, their lamps found extinguished, their bodies twisted in the final agonies of suffocation. The Romans, for all their grand designs, simply sealed off that section, leaving the problem to fester rather than risk more lives. This informal abandonment of particularly dangerous areas highlights a crucial point. While the Romans built impressive infrastructure, the safety of the individual laborer was rarely a paramount concern. Historians continue to debate the exact impact of the sewer system on public health in Rome. Some argue that by removing waste from the streets, the sewers actually improved overall health outcomes, despite the dangers to workers. Others contend that by concentrating waste and creating a breeding ground for disease, the sewers might have actually contributed to endemic illnesses, particularly for those living in close proximity to the sewer outfalls or, like you, working directly within them. The truth, for a sewer worker like you, is brutally simple. You are constantly battling illness, and the odds are stacked against you. You might be performing a task known as scouring, using long poles and rakes to dislodge debris from deeper sections, or to redirect the flow of water to clear a particularly stubborn blockage. This often requires you to lie on your belly, peering into murky depths, or to navigate precariously across slippery ledges, the rushing current just inches below. A misstep could mean a plunge into the foul water, a disorienting, terrifying experience that could easily lead to drowning or becoming trapped by debris. You might emerge gasping, covered head to toe in the city's effluent, only to face the inevitable fever that often follows such a close encounter. The dampness is relentless. Your clothes are perpetually sodden, clinging to your skin, chafing and irritating. This constant moisture fosters skin infections, fungal growths, and contributes to the pervasive chill that never seems to leave your bones. There's no opportunity to dry out, no warm fire to sit by once your shift is over. You simply emerge from one damp, cold environment into another. Your living quarters likely little better than the sewers themselves in terms of warmth and sanitation. Your health is not just precarious during your shifts, it's a chronic, debilitating state of being, as you heave another basket of foul-smelling sludge onto a small platform, preparing it for the ascent. You feel a sharp pang in your chest. It's probably just the damp, you tell yourself, or the strain from the work. But a tiny, insidious seed of fear plants itself in your mind. Is this the start of something more serious? Will you be the next one to succumb, to join the countless unnamed victims of Rome's brutal sanitation system? In this dark, unforgiving world, every cough, every ache, every moment of weakness is a stark reminder of your vulnerability, a chilling whisper of the fate that awaits so many who perform this essential, yet utterly horrifying, work. Your hands, perpetually stained with grime and perpetually chapped from the dampness, are your primary tools, but they're not the only ones. The Romans, for all their ingenuity, didn't have automated systems for sewer maintenance. Everything relied on muscle, endurance, and a few basic, yet surprisingly effective, implements. You reach for the long-handled scoop, its metal head perforated like a sieve. This isn't for digging out solid blockages, but for skimming the surface of the water, collecting the floating debris that could clog narrower channels or simply add to the general putrefaction. You skim off discarded food scraps, bits of cloth, and the occasional, unsettlingly familiar human hair. Then there's the grappling hook, a fearsome-looking contraption on a rope. This is for retrieving larger items that have fallen into the current, sometimes a dropped amphora, sometimes a runaway bucket, and occasionally, with a shudder-inducing dread, a human body. The hooks are sharp, designed to bite into whatever they snag, and you handle them with a cautious respect. Misjudge your pull, and you could send a heavy object swinging dangerously in the confined space. Or worse, lose your grip and send the hook tumbling down into the unknown depths, to be forever lost in the filth. You've heard stories of tools lost this way, swallowed by the sewer, another small cost in the relentless battle against the accumulating waste. For more stubborn blockages, the crowbar becomes your best friend. A heavy, iron bar. It's used to pry apart compacted masses of waste, to chip away at hardened sediment, or to dislodge small stones that have somehow made their way into the system. The work is rhythmic, exhausting, each swing and pry sending vibrations through your aching arms. The clang of metal against stone echoes hollowly in the darkness, a stark reminder of the brute force required for this thankless job. Your muscles burn, sweat mingles with the grime on your skin, and the air around you grows even thicker with the disturbed stench. You also frequently use wicker baskets, like the one you just filled, for hauling out the excavated sludge. These baskets are surprisingly durable, woven tightly to contain the disgusting cargo, but they are also porous. As you hoist a full basket onto your shoulder, the foul water drips down your back, soaking your rough tunic and adding to the perpetual dampness of your existence. Once filled, these baskets are slowly, laboriously hauled to the surface, where their contents are unceremoniously dumped outside the city. Far from the eyes and noses of Rome's respectable citizens, you briefly wonder about the people on the surface who handle these carts. Whether their lives are any less miserable than yours? Probably not. One peculiar tool you've encountered, though rarely, is a primitive form of sounding rod or pole, used to probe the depths of the larger conduits or to check for structural integrity. It's a long, heavy pole, sometimes with a metal tip, that you use to tap against the walls or floor of the sewer, listening for changes in the sound that might indicate a weakened section, a hidden void, or a dangerously thin patch of mortar. This is a job for the more experienced workers, those who have spent years navigating the labyrinth below ground, their ears finely tuned to the subtle whispers of the ancient masonry. It's a grim responsibility, knowing that a misjudgment could lead to a catastrophic collapse. Scholars have long debated the exact specifications of the tools used by Roman sewer workers, with much of the evidence coming from archaeological finds and occasional textual references that rarely go into great detail. This leaves much to the imagination, and to the grim reality of manual labor. You remember being told about the importance of light. Your oil lamp is not just for seeing, it's a lifeline. Without it, the darkness is absolute, a crushing void that would instantly disorient and paralyze you. You carry spare oil, always, and meticulously tend to the wick. A sputtering, dying flame is a harbinger of doom. You've heard the stories of lamps going out, of workers stumbling blindly in the darkness, falling into deep channels, or succumbing to the unseen gases. The small dancing flame is a tiny beacon of hope in a world of oppressive shadows, a constant reminder of your precarious existence. Beyond the specific tools, There's the unseen tool of pure resilience and fatalistic acceptance. You learn to ignore the cold, the stench, the constant dampness. You learn to push through the exhaustion, the aches, the persistent cough. You develop a kind of grim humor, sharing dark jokes with your fellow workers about the perfume of Rome or the treasures you find. This mental fortitude is as crucial as any shovel or hook, allowing you to endure conditions that would break most people within a day. The very construction of the sewers themselves, while a marvel, also created specific challenges for the workers. The smooth, well-mortared sections were relatively easy to navigate, but many parts of the system, especially the older, less refined sections, were rough-hewn, with uneven floors and jagged projections. Sometimes, you'd have to crawl on your hands and knees through particularly narrow pipes. Feeling the cold, slimy walls press in on you. Your lamp held precariously in your mouth or balanced on your head. This was not work for the faint of heart, or for the claustrophobic. One particular detail that often gets overlooked is the constant need for shoring up and repairs. While the main Cloaca Maxima was built to last, smaller feeder lines and older sections were prone to collapse or leakage. You might spend a day not clearing blockages, but shoring up a weak section of wall with timber props, or patching a crack with fresh mortar. All while the foul water continued to flow past you, sometimes dripping onto your head. This constant maintenance was essential, but it added another layer of danger and complexity to an already brutal job. It wasn't just about digging, it was about perpetually mending a decaying body. You scrape away at a particularly stubborn accumulation of clay and compacted waste, the smell so strong it makes your eyes water. You hear the scuttling of a rat nearby, but you barely react. It's just another part of the environment, another shadow in the gloom. The rhythm of the work is hypnotic, a monotonous cycle of digging, lifting, and emptying. Each movement brings you closer to the end of your shift, closer to the brief respite of the surface, but also closer to the inevitable return. These crude tools, wielded by calloused hands, were the silent enablers of Rome's grandeur, the instruments of a hidden world, brutal and unyielding. As you emerge from the dark maw of the sewer, blinking against the relative brightness of the Roman dusk, you realize something profound. Your very being, your social standing, is inextricably linked to the filth you've just left behind. You are a cloacarius. And in Roman society, this label carries the weight of untouchability. You are not a citizen with rights to be championed. You are a necessary evil, a tool for the city's hygiene, and little more. Your existence is a stark contrast to the grand narratives of Roman power and glory. While senators debate laws in marble halls and legionaries conquer distant lands, you are down in the dark, shoveling the very refuse of their lives. Your social status, or rather your lack thereof, is perhaps the most brutal aspect of your job. You are likely a slave. Or at best, a freedman with no real prospects, shackled by debt or circumstances to this most abhorrent of professions. Rome, for all its legal complexities, was a society built on rigid hierarchies. At the top were the patricians, the noble families, followed by the plebeians, the common free citizens. Below them were the freedmen, former slaves who had gained their freedom but often still owed obligations to their former masters. And at the very bottom, forming the backbone of Roman labor, were the slaves, with no rights, no property, and often no hope. For a sewer worker, life was cheap. If you died from disease or accident, you were easily replaced. There was no social safety net, no compensation for injury, no family pension. Your life was defined by your utility, and when that utility ended, you were simply discarded. The Roman elite, who benefited most from the efficient removal of waste, rarely gave a second thought to the grim lives of those who performed this vital service. You were simply part of the infrastructure, as much a tool as the shovels and picks you wielded. Consider for a moment the cultural implications of your work. The Romans, for all their pragmatic approach to engineering, also had strong ideas about purity and pollution. Contact with human waste was inherently polluting, making those who handled it ritually unclean. This wasn't just a physical dirtiness. It was a spiritual taint that relegated you to the absolute fringes of society. You couldn't participate in many religious rituals. You wouldn't be invited to respectable dinner parties. And even the public baths, ironically, might be viewed with suspicion if a known sewer worker were to enter them. Your very profession marked you as an outcast. Historians largely agree that individuals involved in waste management, including sewer workers, held extremely low social standing in Roman society. There's not much direct evidence, surprisingly, about the daily lives of these specific workers, which in itself speaks volumes about their perceived insignificance. They simply weren't important enough to be chronicled. What little we know is gleaned from indirect references in legal texts, satires, or general descriptions of labor conditions for the lowest classes. This academic silence further underlines their marginalized existence. You might live in the squalid tenements, the insula, of the poorer districts, far from the grand villas of the elite. Your living conditions would mirror the filth you worked in, crowded, unsanitary, and breeding grounds for the same diseases that stalked you in the sewers. There was no escape from the pervasive dirt, physical or social. Even after your shift, the stench clung to your clothes, to your hair, an invisible badge of your profession that followed you everywhere. The lack of respect extended beyond just social ostracization. You were likely subject to the whims of your owner or supervisor. Beatings were common, and your work hours were long and brutal, dictated by the needs of the city, not by any consideration for your well-being. There was no one to advocate for you, no union or guild to protect your rights. You were completely exposed, vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. The very concept of workers' rights was utterly alien in this ancient world. Sometimes, you hear snippets of conversation from the world above as you emerge. You hear talk of gladiatorial games, of political intrigue, of grand feasts. These are the lives of the truly free, the citizens who command respect and have a voice. Your own life, by contrast, is a silent testament to the hidden costs of their grandeur. Your voice, if you even dared to raise it, would be ignored, perhaps even punished. You are part of the vast, anonymous labor force that built and maintained Rome. But you are also its most forgotten component. The public perception of sanitation, while appreciated, did not translate into appreciation for the sanitation workers. Romans understood the importance of removing waste, but they preferred to keep it out of sight, out of mind, along with the people who handled it. It was a necessary but disgusting service, and those who performed it were considered inherently disgusting themselves. It's a bitter irony your work enables the cleanliness of the city, yet it condemns you to perpetual uncleanliness, both physically and socially. As you head back to your meager dwelling, your body aches, and the lingering smell of the sewer follows you like a phantom. You pass by a bustling tavern, full of laughter and light, and for a fleeting moment, you imagine a different life, one where you are not defined by the filth you manage. But the thought vanishes as quickly as it came, replaced by the grim reality of your existence. You are Rome's unseen sacrifice, the human cost of its grand ambition, relegated to the shadows, forever stained by the darkness you inhabit. You stand on the muddy banks of the Tiber River, the very artery of Rome, but also its ultimate drain. For all the engineering marvels of the Cloaca Maxima, its final destination, and indeed the destination of much of Rome's waste that never even saw the inside of a sewer, was here. You've been tasked with a different kind of cleanup today, one that highlights the sheer scale of Rome's waste problem beyond the confines of the underground. This is the night soil trade, a euphemism for the collection and disposal of human waste from homes that weren't connected to the sewer system, or from public latrines that simply emptied into cesspits. Many Roman homes, especially the smaller, humbler dwellings and upper floors of multi-story insulae, lacked direct plumbing. For these residents, chamber pots were the standard, and when those pots were full, their contents had to go somewhere. Often, they were simply emptied out of windows into the narrow, crowded streets below, adding to the layers of grime and stench that perpetually clung to Rome's alleyways. You've stepped in enough of it on your way to work to know this grim reality firsthand. This public defenestration of waste was a constant source of complaint, and even led to specific Roman laws attempting to curb it, though enforcement was likely sporadic at best. But for a more organized disposal, people would bring their chamber pots to designated collection points, or, more commonly, pay someone like you to collect it. These collectors, often slaves or the very lowest class of freedmen, would go door to door, gathering the night soil in large buckets or amphorae. Imagine the stench of that job, not just the damp, enclosed stench of the sewers, but the open, festering smell of raw human waste, carried through the very streets of the city. You might be carrying 2 heavy, sloshing buckets, the contents threatening to slosh over with every step, the flies buzzing relentlessly around your head. Once collected, this night soil had to be transported out of the city. This often meant long, arduous journeys through crowded streets, past indifferent citizens who would wrinkle their noses and avert their gaze. Your destination: the vast agricultural fields outside Rome. Here, the waste was spread as fertilizer on crops. Yes, you heard that right. The very waste collected from the city was used to help grow the food that fed the city. It's a grim example of ancient recycling, driven by necessity and a fundamental understanding of nutrient cycling, even if the hygienic implications were utterly overlooked. This practice, while economically sensible for the farmers who bought or received this fertilizer, presented its own set of brutal challenges for you and your colleagues. The manual spreading of raw human waste was incredibly unsanitary, leading to widespread parasite infections and the potential for disease outbreaks among agricultural workers and, by extension, the city's population through contaminated food. Scholars have long debated the extent to which this practice contributed to recurrent epidemics in ancient Rome, with some arguing it was a major factor in the propagation of diseases like dysentery and typhoid. The public latrines, though seemingly more advanced, had their own role in this cycle of filth. While many were connected to the sewer system, some simply emptied into large, excavated cesspits. These pits required regular emptying, a task performed by workers like you. This involved descending into a dark, reeking hole, shoveling out semi-liquid, putrid waste, and then hauling it up to the surface in buckets. The danger of toxic gases in these confined pits was even greater than in the open sewers, with many workers simply collapsing and suffocating. It was a truly horrifying job, made worse by the claustrophobic confines and the immediate, overwhelming stench. The existence of these night soil collectors and cesspit emptiers highlights the unevenness of Rome's sanitation infrastructure. While the Cloaca Maxima was a marvel, it didn't serve the entire city, and even where it did, it wasn't always adequate. This created a dual system of waste management: the relatively cleaner, flowing sewers for the privileged areas and public facilities, and the brutal manual collection of human waste for the rest. You are a cog in both systems, experiencing the full spectrum of Rome's filth. You often hear the cynical jokes among your fellow workers. At least the fields get a good meal, or we feed Rome, one bucket at a time. It's a dark humor, born of desperation and the grim reality of your profession. The work is physically demanding, carried out under the scorching sun or in the chilling damp, always accompanied by the pervasive, nauseating smell. There's no dignity in it, no recognition, just the relentless grind of moving human waste from one place to another. The Roman fascination with public baths, while impressive, inadvertently contributed to the night soil dilemma. The vast amounts of water used in the baths, once it overflowed, helped flush the main sewers, but this meant less water was available for domestic use or for smaller, private latrines, pushing more citizens towards chamber pots and the manual collection system. It's an intricate, messy web, and you're caught right in the center of it, literally wading through the consequences. As you finish your shift, your body aching, your clothes stiff with dried filth, you look back at the city. Its grand buildings gleam in the fading light, a testament to human ambition. But you know the hidden truth, the dark, putrid underbelly that supports it all. You are a testament to the fact that even the most glorious empires are built on the back of immense, often unseen, human suffering and the brutal realities of waste. The darkness of the sewers isn't just a physical absence of light, it's a spiritual void, a place where the gods seem to have forgotten you. Yet, even in this putrid underworld, the Romans, including those at the very bottom of society, clung to their beliefs. For you, a sewer worker, these beliefs took on a different, perhaps more desperate, hue. You wouldn't be praying to Jupiter for victory in battle or to Venus for love. Your prayers, if you dared to utter them, would be for a safe shift, for protection from disease, or simply for the strength to endure another day. The Romans had a vast pantheon of gods and goddesses, each overseeing different aspects of life. And surprisingly, given the stigma surrounding waste, there were indeed deities associated with drainage, cleansing, and even filth itself. You might murmur a quick invocation to Cloacina, an ancient goddess, possibly of Etruscan origin, who was originally associated with the purification of the Roman Forum, which, remember, was built on reclaimed marshland drained by the early sewer system. Her name, conveniently, sounded very much like cloaca, making her the patroness of the sewer system, albeit a rather overlooked one. Her shrine, a small, circular enclosure with a statue, was located in the Roman Forum, a stark contrast to the dark, reeking tunnels you inhabit. You often wonder if she ever truly looked down into the depths, or if her gaze remained fixed on the clean, open spaces above. There was also Stercutius, the god of manure, from the Latin word stercus, meaning dung, a less glamorous deity, to be sure, but one that held a grim relevance for those who dealt with the city's waste, especially the night soil collectors. Farmers would offer him prayers for fertile fields, but you, as a collector of the raw material, might offer a silent plea for an easier load or less noxious fumes. These were not the grand, powerful gods of the Roman state, but rather minor, almost forgotten deities, often worshipped by the lower classes, whose lives were intimately connected to the earth and its raw, untamed aspects. Superstition, rather than formal religion, probably played a far larger role in your daily life in the sewers. You might carry a small amulet, a charm against bad luck, or perhaps a dried herb meant to ward off evil spirits or disease. You've heard stories, passed down from older workers, of certain sections of the sewer being haunted by the restless spirits of those who died within them, victims of gas, collapse, or disease, their bodies perhaps never recovered. You might make a quick sign to avert ill omen before entering a particularly dark or treacherous passage, or whisper a prayer to an unnamed benevolent spirit to guide your lamp. The concept of genius loci, the spirit of a place, was strong in Roman belief. And if places had spirits, what kind of spirit would dwell in the reeking, hidden world of the sewers? Perhaps a malevolent one, intent on dragging down the unwary? Or perhaps a weary, long-suffering spirit that simply wished to be left undisturbed? You treat the sewer with a grudging respect, a place that can both take life and, paradoxically, sustain the city by removing its waste. Historians still debate the extent and specific nature of religious practices among the lowest classes and slaves in Rome. While some evidence suggests they adopted aspects of the Roman pantheon, their worship often incorporated elements of their native traditions, or focused on more personal, practical deities related to their daily struggles. For a sewer worker, the abstract glory of the Roman gods might seem distant and irrelevant. replaced by a more immediate, visceral need for protection from the very real dangers of their environment. You might even have your own personal, unspoken rituals before descending, a quick spit for luck, a silent vow to return to your family, or a moment of quiet contemplation, bracing yourself for the horrors to come. These small acts of defiance against the overwhelming despair are what keep you going, what maintain a fragile sense of humanity in the face of such dehumanizing work. The Romans also believed in omens and portents. A sudden flock of birds flying overhead, the way smoke curled from a sacrifice, the entrails of an animal, all could be read for signs of the future. Down in the sewer, your omens were different: the sudden, inexplicable sputtering of your lamp, the unsettling silence of the rats, or the unusually strong, cloying sweetness in the air that signaled dangerous gas. These were your portents, often warning of immediate danger, not distant triumphs. In a society that valued purity and cleanliness, the very act of dealing with filth placed you outside the mainstream religious sphere. You couldn't participate in the grand public sacrifices. Your presence might even be seen as defiling. This further isolated you, pushing you into a spiritual solitude where you had to find your own ways to cope with the immense spiritual and physical burden of your work. The gods of Rome, for all their power, seemed to belong to the world above, leaving you to contend with the more primal, terrifying forces of disease and decay below. You've spent countless hours navigating the labyrinthine passages beneath Rome, experiencing firsthand the brutal realities of ancient sanitation. But as you emerge once more, your body aching, your clothes still reeking despite attempts to air them out, you can't help but notice the echoes of this ancient struggle in the world around you. Even in your own time, the Roman approach to waste, for all its brutality, laid some foundational stones that, in distorted ways, still shape how modern societies think about, or perhaps don't think about, their own waste. Consider the hidden infrastructure. Just like Rome, modern cities rely on vast, unseen networks beneath their streets: water pipes, gas lines, communication cables, and of course, sewers. You rarely see them, rarely think about them, until something goes wrong. A burst water main, a blocked sewer line. These modern inconveniences briefly expose the intricate, hidden systems that make urban life possible. In this sense, the Roman sewers were the ancient predecessors of our complex underground networks, demanding constant, often unseen, maintenance. Then there's the social hierarchy of labor. While direct slavery is thankfully no longer the norm, many essential, yet undesirable jobs in modern society are still performed by those at the lower end of the socio-economic spectrum. Think of sanitation workers, waste collectors, or even those who clean public facilities. These roles, while vital, often carry a stigma, are poorly paid, and are frequently filled by immigrant populations or those with limited other options. Just as the Roman cloacarii were indispensable yet looked down upon, many contemporary societies still grapple with how to value and compensate those who perform their dirtiest work. It's a subtle but persistent echo of the ancient past. The concept of out of sight, out of mind when it comes to waste is a powerful one, and Rome mastered it. By burying their main sewer system and dumping waste outside the city, they created an illusion of cleanliness for the average citizen. Modern societies do much the same. We flush our toilets, put our trash at the curb, and it magically disappears. We rarely contemplate the vast landfill sites, the complex recycling plants, or the sewage treatment facilities that process our waste. This detachment from the consequences of our consumption and waste generation is a direct descendant of the Roman model: keep the dirt away from polite society. Historians frequently draw parallels between Roman engineering achievements and their modern counterparts, noting how fundamental challenges, like waste management, have persisted throughout history, albeit with evolving technological solutions. However, the human cost, particularly for the laborers involved, is a crucial, often overlooked, continuity. The essential nature of these services remains, as does the often thankless role of those who provide them. Even the health implications have a dark resonance. While we have germ theory and advanced medical care, the dangers of working with waste haven't entirely vanished. Sanitation workers today still face risks from pathogens, hazardous materials, and accidents. Though safety measures are far more advanced, the fundamental exposure to biological and chemical hazards remains a reality, linking them, however distantly, to your own brutal existence in the Roman sewers. And what about the constant struggle between progress and practical limitations? The Romans built an incredible system for their time, but it was far from perfect and required immense manual labor. Similarly, modern sanitation systems, for all their sophistication, are not immune to blockages, collapses, or environmental challenges. We invent new technologies, but the fundamental problems of managing human and industrial waste persist, often requiring significant human intervention to maintain. This continuous, evolving battle against entropy, against the natural accumulation of waste, is a thread that connects your ancient world to our contemporary one. You might see a modern street sweeper or a garbage truck, and for a fleeting moment, a sense of shared purpose, a recognition of the same gritty, essential work, passes through you. The tools are different, the technology vastly superior, but the core task, managing the waste of a vast urban population, remains strikingly similar. The city still produces waste. The waste still needs to go somewhere, and someone, somewhere, still has to deal with it. The more things change, it seems, the more some fundamental aspects of human civilization, particularly its dirtiest parts, remain stubbornly the same. You've witnessed the physical dangers, the social ignominy, and the sheer, relentless brutality of working in Rome's underground. But as your shift draws to a close, and you begin your slow, weary climb towards the surface, you start to grasp a more profound truth: the magnificent achievements of the Roman Empire. The very grandeur you see reflected in the monumental architecture and the complex social structures were built upon an immense and often unseen human cost: your life, and the lives of countless others performing similar essential yet abhorrent tasks, represent the hidden price of their progress. Think of the mighty aqueducts, those incredible feats of engineering that brought clean, fresh water from distant mountains directly into the heart of Rome. They are celebrated, rightly so, as triumphs of Roman ingenuity. But what happened to all that water after it served its purpose in the public baths, the fountains, and the wealthy homes? It flowed into the sewers, carrying with it the city's waste, and creating the very environment that became your daily hell. The brilliance of the aqueducts was inextricably linked to the squalor of the sewers, and by extension, to your suffering. One could not exist without the other. Consider the thriving Roman economy, fueled by trade, agriculture, and conquest. This prosperity allowed for the building of grand cities, the maintenance of a powerful army, and the leisure activities of the elite. But this vibrant economic life also generated immense amounts of waste, from the markets overflowing with discarded produce and animal offal, to the workshops producing goods and leaving behind refuse, to the vast quantities of human waste from a densely packed population. Your work, however despised, was a crucial, foundational element of this economic engine. Without efficient waste removal, Rome would have been choked by its own refuse, making sustained growth and prosperity impossible. The ethical implications of Roman labor practices, particularly slavery and the treatment of the lowest classes, are a consistent point of contention and detailed study among historians. While some Roman writers extolled the virtues of hard work, they rarely, if ever, acknowledged the brutal conditions faced by those who performed the most unpleasant and dangerous tasks. The academic discourse often grapples with how to reconcile Rome's undeniable contributions to civilization with its deeply exploitative social structures. Your existence is a vivid, living example of this difficult historical truth. You are a cog in the vast machine of empire, a machine that prioritizes its own function and grandeur over the well-being of its individual components. Your pain, your illness, your shortened life expectancy, These are simply externalities, unmeasured costs absorbed by the most vulnerable. The magnificent Roman roads, enabling rapid communication and troop movements, did not account for the suffering of the slaves who built them, often under the lash. The impressive public buildings did not reflect the lives of the quarry workers or the laborers who dragged massive stones across the countryside. The sewers are no different. They are a monument to Roman achievement, but also a tomb for the dignity and health of those who maintained them. The very concept of civilization in ancient Rome was built on this foundation of hidden suffering. The ability of the elite to live lives of relative comfort and cleanliness was directly dependent on the fact that others were forced to endure unimaginable filth. Your constant battle against the accumulating waste allowed for the illusion of order and sophistication on the surface. Without you, the marble would be stained, the air would be unbreathable, and the grand city would descend into a state of disease-ridden chaos. There's a subtle, almost cynical beauty in this brutal truth. The grand narrative of Rome, often told through the lens of emperors and legions, omits the countless anonymous individuals like yourself who literally cleared the path for its glory. You are the unspoken footnote, the unacknowledged sacrifice. And as you feel the cool, fresh air of the surface against your face, a stark contrast to the oppressive reek below, you carry with you not just the physical grime of the sewers, but the heavy weight of this profound historical irony. The sun begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a beautiful sight utterly unlike the perpetual gloom of your workplace. Citizens hurry home, their conversations and laughter drifting on the evening breeze. None of them spare a glance for you, the figure emerging from the shadowed entrance to the underworld, a silent testament to the invisible costs of their magnificent city. You are a living reminder that every great civilization casts a long shadow, and within that shadow, untold sacrifices are made. As you stand on the cusp of the final descent into sleep, your mind still carries the lingering stench and pervasive dampness of the Roman sewers. You've navigated the narrow, putrid tunnels, felt the icy grip of disease, and understood the crushing weight of social contempt. Now, as the last vestiges of the ancient world recede, let's take a moment to absorb the full weight of this unseen price. The human cost etched into the very foundations of one of history's grandest empires. The brilliance of Roman engineering, from the aqueducts that delivered life-giving water to the city, to the magnificent public baths where citizens gathered and socialized, depended utterly on the counterpart of their waste management, the Cloaca Maxima, a testament to their ambition and ingenuity. Was also a relentless consumer of human lives and dignity. It was a marvel of its age. Yes, but one whose seamless function relied on the silent suffering of individuals like you, the Cloacari. You were the living, breathing, and tragically dying. Sacrifice made at the altar of urban progress. Think of the contrast, the sparkling marble of the Forum, bustling with vibrant life and intellectual discourse, versus the perpetually dark, foul-smelling passages beneath, where you toiled in isolation and danger. The loud, proud triumphs of victorious legions echoing through the streets, juxtaposed with the quiet, unmourned deaths of those who succumbed to the unseen perils of the sewers. Rome's grandeur was not a monolithic achievement, but a complex tapestry woven with threads of both glory and grim exploitation. The more pristine the surface, the deeper and darker the hidden underworld had to be. The diseases that plagued you, the toxic gases that suffocated your colleagues, the constant threat of structural collapse. These weren't mere unfortunate accidents. They were inherent risks, an accepted part of the job, because the value of your life was deemed negligible against the city's need for sanitation. There was no true recourse, no justice. Only the brutal reality of a system that consumed its laborers just as readily as it consumed the city's refuse. This stark inequality, this deep chasm between the lives of the privileged and the expendable, is one of the most sobering lessons from this hidden chapter of Roman history. And yet, despite the horrors, the work continued. Generations of unnamed, Unthanked individuals descended into that darkness, ensuring that Rome could continue to thrive. Their resilience, their sheer will to survive another day, is a testament to the enduring human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. They were the silent enablers, the true unsung heroes, whose contributions were vital but perpetually invisible, buried beneath layers of earth and social disdain. As you drift further into the quietude of sleep, let the image of the Roman sewers fade. Let the stench dissipate, the dampness recede. Remember not just the engineering marvel, but the profound human cost that allowed such a marvel to exist. It's a somber, yet crucial reminder that history isn't just about emperors and empires, but about the countless individuals whose lives, struggles, and sacrifices paved the way for the world as we know it.